Good morning, Sunday School. Good morning. Good morning. Wow. I'm trying so hard on these Sunday mornings to get over from my other class, but class gets juicy sometime. So I am here now. Good morning. I see you popping in. I'm so happy to see you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are going to St. John chapter 13 this morning. And we're talking about, sir. There we are. We're popping in. What? Jay Snowball is number 1 today. Awesome. All right. So today is anniversary Sunday or pastoral anniversary Sunday at my church. And so I am here. This building is completely abuzz. We're being very safe. Our COVID protocols are still in check, but compared to a normal Sunday, there are more people here, and I can see the people in the parking lot pulling up, and we have to make reservations to come to worship. So I can tell you that our worship reservation list was full today. So it's just a lot going on. When I came in, I posted on social media my favorite sight of the morning. When I came in, I could hear my class somewhere else in the building. And when I went looking, because there were just like 3 cars when I got here, but when I went looking, there were members of the dance team doing their pre-meeting so they can have their practice, and they were stretching, and somebody had their cell phone out, and they were all in Sunday school by cell phone. So that was awesome. I love when people do whatever it takes to get to Sunday school, and so I'm appreciative for those who are serving today, even in their capacity serving in the dance ministry today. They did not let that deter them. So I am excited to get our lesson started, and I will be timely, even though I started a couple of minutes late, because I want to make sure I'm in the service when we get started. So this morning we are in St. John chapter 13. We're going to talk about loving by serving. Good morning to all of you. Hey, I haven't seen y'all click that thumbs up like button yet. Please be sure to do that as you're coming in. Just click that like button. Go ahead and boost us up. Happy to have everyone in Sunday school. Let's go ahead and pray so we can get started. Gracious Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for another opportunity, God, because you are a great God, and you are bigger and you are better than anything that comes against us in our lives. But you love us so much that you empower and you equip us through your word and through the power of your spirit to encounter life's challenges, and not to just go through life and be beat up by life, but your word enables us to get the victory in every situation. And so today, God, we bless you for your word. We never take for granted the opportunity to study your word, to be challenged by your word, to be made better by your word. That's what this is today. God, we ask that you will open up our minds, our hearts, our understanding to receive what you have from us, and to provoke us to be the kinds of servants that you called us to be. Bless every person who will be a part of our class, and even those who will click onto the replay. I pray for every service today, every church that meets in your name, be it in person or virtually, God. I pray that you will bless them, bless the people who will receive. We love you and we give you glory in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Oh, wow, Sister Amina, thank you so much. While I was praying, Sister Amina has already blessed our class offering this morning with $30. Thank you so much. You are consistent and a great blessing to this ministry. I appreciate you. In fact, I need you to do me a favor, Sister Amina. Would you email me at ThatSundaySchoolGirl@gmail.com? Email me your address, your mailing address. Please do that for me. Anyone else who wants to do what Sister Amina has done can definitely use the super chat button down below. Or you can use our Givelify, which is That Sunday School Girl. If you search Givelify, the app on your phone, it's a free download. Or Cashapp, That Sunday School Girl, and all of your gifts go to support ministry. All right, I see so many of my friends and faves on, and I hope that my internet will support us. There are a lot of people in the building today, and so let's go to loving 13 verses 1 through 15, and then verses 34 and 35. I don't know why my notes have disappeared. I just used them in my previous class. That's not good. Was the Lord trying to see? This has happened once before when I had to preach somewhere. And I left my preaching notes at home. And I had to remember what the Lord showed me in my time of study. And that just may be my day today, right? All right, so let's go to what I can't read to you right now is, this is not good. I just had these up. I promise I did. In my second class today. Let me just go ahead and read the printed text and we can get through the rest of it because I actually do know my lesson today. Yes, I do. We're going to read verses 1 through 15 and then 34 and 35. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour was come, that he should depart out of this world unto the Father, having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them until the end. And supper being ended, the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he was come from God, and went to God, he riseth up from supper, and layeth aside his garments, and took a towel, and girded himself. After he poured water into a basin, he began to wash the feet of his disciples, and wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. Then he cometh to Simon Peter, and Peter said unto him, Lord, dost thou wash my feet? And Jesus answered and said unto him, What I do thou knowest not now, but thou shalt know hereafter. Peter said unto him, Thou shalt never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, If I wash thee not, thou hast no part with me. Simon Peter saith unto him, Lord, not only my feet, but also my hands and my head. Jesus said to him, He that is washed needeth not say to wash his feet, but is clean every whit, and ye are clean, but not all. For he knew who should betray him. Therefore he said, Ye are not all clean. After he had washed their feet, he had taken his garments and sat down again. He said unto them, Know ye what I have done unto you? Ye call me Master and Lord, and ye say, Well, for so I am. If then your Lord and Master have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that ye should do as I have done to you. And a new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you, and that ye also love one another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, that ye have love one for another. This is our printed text on today as we're looking at loving by serving. And I have an opening question for you. What is the most something that a leader has done for either someone that people that they serve, that you've seen a leader do? What is the most striking thing that you've seen a leader do in the interest of another person? What is the most striking thing anywhere that you've seen a leader do? We talked about a couple of things in my first class this morning. I think anytime you see the leaders cleaning the bathrooms at the church, that's a big deal. It means a lot to me when it's not just a leader who can serve in a pulpit and who can serve. I'm from the Pentecostal church. Y'all know that. It means more to me when I see you, when the music is gone, when I see how you move in everyday life. Sister Crystal Henry says, giving food to the homeless. I love that. Absolutely. I also thought about being in the home of, I was in the home of Bishop Vincent Matthews, who is the missions president for the Church of God in Christ Worldwide. And a couple of years ago, we went to visit after the loss of his son. And when my brother and I arrived, he wasn't there, but his wife was there. And we spent time with her and their children. And then she kept saying, Can I get you anything? But of course, we were there in their time of bereavement. And so we didn't want anything. But she says, when something. And so sure enough, when he came home, he kept saying, What can I get you? I need to give you something. You need to eat while you're here. Again, not only is this his time of bereavement, but he's a bishop. He's an international president. He's been all over the world, worldwide, as we love to say. And yet he was looking for a way. And he said, You're going to take something. I've got chicken. I've got this. And finally, I said, Bishop, I'll take a chocolate chip cookie. Insisted on serving us in his home. Sister Laura says we had a pastor who was not from the part of the city cleaning people's graves when they didn't clean them. Oh my goodness. That's huge. Cutting the church grass, Sister Murdoch, I agree with you. Or God bless those pastors who come in the Midwest and in the northern parts of our country who, in the East Coast, when the snow hits, God bless those pastors who show up early and shovel the snow. Absolutely. Helping those in need. I see homeless, doing favors for people. Your pastor cooks for volunteers once a year, Sister Woodard. I love that. Wanting the children to be fed in any occasion. These are all great. In Western Florida, supervisor makes you feel that everyone is important. Absolutely. Had a pastor who would open his home to members who didn't have a home. These are all beautiful ways of serving God's people. And that is exactly what we're looking at today in this lesson with Jesus as he is serving his disciples. Now, you all, I already told you that I can't even pull up my notes, so we're going to just talk about this lesson. This is where you have to be real glad when your teacher is studying. In the book of John, and you can begin to tell me what you studied and what you saw, what you found. What did you find about John or the book of John? And tell me what you know about this setting. Where is Jesus and what is going on and what's happening with his disciples? So we are looking at the final 24 hours in the life of Jesus. Here is John, who loved, the beloved, who writes about Jesus and his words. He has a way of speaking and he gives information that the other gospels don't, really based out of the relationship. Sometimes the way you see and love someone will certainly come out in the ways that you share your story. And so he uses chapters 13 through 18 to really parse out what happens in the last 20 hours of the life of Jesus. Sister Cheryl says that John records events from a more personal note than the others, and that's absolutely true. He is the one who gives us really, again, this level of detail. And honestly, if you read chapters 13 through 18, it seems like the longest 24 hours ever. But as we watch what happens, and I am always really sensitive looking at kind of the last times that I've had with certain people. So I remember the last times with my dad and the last times with my grandfather. And when I look at Jesus, okay, John baptized Jesus. Jesus trusted John, yes, Mother Ricks, with his mother at the end. Son, behold your mother. Mother, behold your son. That was the level of relationship. Oranges 18 have an awesome service. That was, I forgot we had a time change too. Fall back. That was an awesome, though, experience for him to trust him in that way, to be able to give his mother to him. Oh my goodness, the whole hallway is going to hear me teach at the church. And so here we are now in this experience with Jesus in the upper room. It's his last time. Chapter 12 was the end of his public ministry at the home of Lazarus. That's the end of his public ministry. But now these last spaces, he spends them with the people that he loves the most, that he has spent the most time with, who have walked with him effectively for 3 years at this point. And it would seem like after 3 years that they really know him. He's gotten to know them. Let's talk about these disciples. These are men who left everything they had, everything that they knew, really to blindly follow after Jesus. But now, here in doing so, they have seen who he's done and the miracles that with him. So here is this space where we know that we're inside of the Passover being the feast celebrated by the Jews that was a recognition of their deliverance from Egypt. It was not abnormal. In fact, if it's on the calendar, it's the Passover. Church of God in Christ, friends, the second Sunday in November is official day. This is the week that we know that we historically would be traveling to the Holy Convocation. It was an annual thing. It was what they did. So not their first Passover. In fact, having been with him 3 years, this would have been their third time celebrating Passover with Jesus. And it wasn't a drive-by meal. It was a sit down and take your time and reflect on the experience. And I think it's important that we remember to keep things in front of our families and our children. There are important things about the celebrations that we hold dear. He's here, the time of the Passover, but Jesus knows, even if nobody else is paying attention, Jesus knows this is it. And he's tried to help them see that and understand that with his words and with his actions. You could see him winding things up. He even told them, my life is going to be taken, but in 3 days, I'm getting back up again. And it was Peter who was like, no, that's not going to happen. We're going to do everything we can. We're going to be down for you. We're not going to let it happen. And Jesus is trying to prepare their minds, their hearts for what is going to happen. Sister Mobley, I am with you. Let's see, you said you never looked at chapter 13 like that before. Absolutely. And so there are definitely some connectivities that we'll continue to see between chapter 12 and chapter 13. But now Jesus knows that it's his time. As you look at the book of John, John writes a lot about time and timing. So he knows that his hour has come. There's a reference to time. And he knows that it's time for him to leave the world and to go back to his Father. When I look at leave the world and go back to the Father, there are a couple of things that I see in here. And we're talking about serving. I'm not off track here. We are talking about serving. But Jesus in this moment knows who he is. He knows where he's come from, and he knows who he is. You and I, we've got to get grounded and know whose we are and what we're doing, what this is all about. This is not about just now, but we serve and we are God's people. And when you do that and you realize, doesn't jeopardize that. It doesn't change who you are. So being very clear on the time, very clear on where he came from, and very clear on whose he was. Now he's sitting at this table with this group of men. Now, it would have been customary in those days when you come into a house, just like you and I, when we sit down to a table, you don't just roll in from the outside and sit down and think we're about to have dinner together. No, please go wash your hands. Depending on where you've been, you may need to change your clothes. There is a readiness that we take when we're about to have a meal. And there was a custom in those homes in that time in Eastern culture, as people would walk, think about the sandals and the dust on their feet. Well, when you would come in, you would have your feet washed. Now, typically, if your home had resources, if you had money, you would have hired a servant to do that. But if you didn't have that, you would have taken the person in the family who was the lowest on the family tree. I teasingly said your least favorite child, but you would have picked a person to be that one to wash the feet of people as they came into your home. It was serving. It was hospitality. It was a part of the custom. But now these men have come in, and they've come in from the outside. And I think it's the gospel about this story. They come in, they're sitting at the table, but instead of thinking about the fact that we have not come to the table ready, they are talking about who's most wonderful, who's the greatest. So here's my question for you. What are the ways in the church today? What are the ways in church today that we talk about who is the greatest? And those conversations are real. It happens. Who's the greatest? Who's got the most speaking engagements? Who's got the most flyers? Who's got the most likes? Who's got the most members? Who's got the most? They were so focused on who's got the highest position, who sings on this praise team, who's in the choir. They were literally going back and forth on who was the greatest instead of being focused on what was really going on and focused on what was important. And that was that moment with Jesus. Mother says, focus on who's got what degrees and who lives in what home, who drove up on what in the parking lot, who lives in what neighborhood. There are so many places that we can compare. And that's what the disciples were doing. Who is the greatest? And at the same time, they were sitting with the greatest man on earth in that moment. And they were missing the moment. And so here we are. There's a need right in front of everyone's faces, but their focus was so off that they missed the need. I think there's a nugget there for us. Please, we've got to be careful, my brothers and sisters, that we are not so caught up on who's wonderful. I made a post this morning. God is not calling us to be sensational. He's not calling us to be superstars. He is putting needs all around us, not for everybody to say that we're wonderful, but he's giving us that moment to become a servant, to see a need and not let it sit there while we're being wonderful, but to be able to stop what we're doing and to serve other people. So here is the greatest man in the room. He's in this room and he is really aware of everybody who's around him. And we'll get back to, I'm not forgotten about Judas. We'll get there. But because nobody else is doing anything, He didn't even say anything. And there are too many people who are talking about what they're doing and not doing what needs to be done. He didn't put out a flyer. He didn't put out a post. He literally just got up and he started to do what it took to wash feet. Took his outer garment off. He shed what would have been like his robe seems to be a big deal in other passages. In fact, look in chapter 19, when they put the robe on him to mock him as the king of the Jews. He took off a garment. He took off something to put on the role of a servant. And he begins to get the water and a basin. And people are watching the greatest man in the room do that. And nobody is moved because they're stunned, because they see him now putting himself in the place of a servant. He's doing what should have been done. Woulda, coulda, shoulda is in place. Nobody else has moved. And he just begins to wash the disciples' feet. And I love this. I think it's verse 5 says that when he was done washing their feet, he wiped them with a towel. It doesn't just say he poured water and let their feet drip all over the place, but he dries their feet with a towel. Jesus does the job completely. He washes them and he does the job completely. He doesn't leave it half done. You and I, when Jesus washes us, he washes us completely. He doesn't leave the job half done. And then he's washed disciples' feet. Then he gets up to Peter. And now here's Peter, and he's like, whoa, Jesus, whoa, are you about to wash my feet? Now this kind of felt like a duh. Didn't you see him when he stood up and took his outer garment off? You didn't see him when he got the water ready? Haven't you seen him wash other people? Now it's your turn. And Peter says, I can't let you do that. I can't let you wash my feet. Now, why do you all think that Peter did not want Jesus to wash his feet? Why do you think there was that level of apprehension and pushback on the part of Peter? Sister Dolores Tyson says that Jesus takes on the role of both the host and the servant in washing the disciples' feet. Absolutely. And Sister Woodard, yes, being delivered from people. They were shocked, Sister Crystal, for sure. And even look at the symbolism of the preparedness. Jesus was preparing to wash their feet. He took off a garment. He, just like he even took off a flesh suit to die for us. He took that garment off. He put himself in the position that nobody ever expected, and he begins to pour out the water. Think about his role on the cross. He takes off this human flesh suit. He's done with this. He's shedding this off to go back to his Father. And it's a role that people would not have expected to see this man on this cross. And there on the cross, he pours out his blood. He's always been putting himself in these ways. And I looked at this. He always sheds something to put on the role that he actually is. Even when he says, no man takes my life from me, I shed it. I lay it down. I lay it down to put myself in this space of a servant so that you can live. I'm serving you in this way so that you might have life. Jesus did not want to leave his disciples knowing what their calling was, so he gave them an example of what they were to be like. Sister Evelyn says. Brother Rick says that Peter could have been uncomfortable with Jesus serving him, for sure. Peter saw Jesus' position as one who would not typically wash people. And what foot washing was about, it was about the relationship. I agree with all of these. Brother Kevin, thank you so much for your class offering of $25. I appreciate you being a blessing to this ministry always. Thank you so much. That is my friend and my brother, y'all. Thank you. I took a serious look at Peter, and the first disciple spoke with humility, not as thought before. First speak up, first with the sword. Okay, so Peter is that guy. He always has something to say. Peter always speaks up. And what I was sharing with my class earlier is it's really interesting. So as we look at this text, we see here that Jesus knows who is around him. He knows the temperament. He's been with these guys for 3 years. He knows who's around him. And yet he chooses to serve them anyway. He does it without respect of their shortcomings, their mistakes. He serves anyway. And so there's Judas sitting there who he knows will betray him. In fact, the lesson says that evil was already put in his heart. You go back and find that he's already been paid the 30 pieces of silver. The plan is already in motion that Judas will betray Jesus. And yet Jesus serves him like everyone else. Now, let's go back to Peter. Peter is saying no in this moment. But if you look at Peter, he's always that mouth. He says what other people are thinking. Again, when Jesus said, I'm going to leave, and no, we're not going to let that happen. He's been vocal about everything. He's the guy who cuts off a soldier's ear when Jesus has to put it back on. He's always an extremist. And so here he is. He's not able to accept the fact that his leader has put himself in the place of a servant and is going to wash his feet. Let's pause and talk about that for a minute, because that's nice to sort of recap as a story. But the truth is, there's a lesson for us with Peter, right? It's not just seeing the leadership, but there are some of us who will give all day long, but we are not good receivers. It's difficult to put yourself sometime. In fact, it is a position of humility to receive as it is as much to serve. Because receiving means that someone has recognized a deficit in you and they've chosen to fill a gap. And the humility for us, because we don't like to be exposed. We don't people to see if we have something. I don't care if it's someone who brings someone groceries. Sometimes people don't want you to know they didn't have or they were without. We sometimes struggle with people seeing our gap areas. We struggle sometimes, not just with the giving of love, but even receiving it. So I think there is a lesson that we gain from Peter, that we too need to be humble enough to receive help, humble enough to receive love, and just find servants and to see the needs. So I think there are two sides of this conversation today. So here's this Peter. Can't have you do that. And Jesus says, but if I don't do this, you will have no part of me. And Peter is still struggling. This is hard for him. It's still hard. And then Jesus says, you don't understand right now, but it's going to make sense later on. And think about it. A whole lot of Jesus' life hasn't made sense to them. It just hasn't made a lot of sense. And so Peter then accepts. But now here's the extremist. We go from no, rejection, to listen, give it all to me. Wash my head, wash my shoulders, wash my fingertips. He just wants everything to be washed. And Jesus has to be really clear for him. It's not bath time. It's not a spa, Peter. I didn't come to wash your entire body. You took a bath before you left home, right? Okay, listen, everybody in here had a bath, and yet you still need to be clean. He's trying to help them understand. Jesus taught in parables, and now here he is. He's living out a parable in front of them. He's walking this before them and saying, it's not about an external bath. There's a cleansing that you need, and I need to let me focus on that area in you that needs to be clean. And so Jesus says, it's not your entire body, but I've identified that area where you need to be clean. There are times that God will clean us in certain areas. God needs to get in and wash us in those areas and make us right. He says, all of you are bath clean. You've had a bath today, yet you're not all clean that sit in this room. There are those areas that need to be addressed. Things are not all well. And I am the person with the ability to clean you in the way that needs to be done. And so he allows Jesus to wash his feet. And Jesus says he's going to betray him that night. He already knew that. Let's talk about that for a second. He knew, verse 11 says, that Judas was going to betray him that night. I know y'all are laughing at me because I'm teaching with a Bible today. I don't know where my notes are. But Jesus knew. Verse 11 said he knew it. He knew that Judas was going to betray him. I think it was verse 1 that told us he had full knowledge of where he was. Jesus knew, and he was in control even in that moment. And this for me, when I look at the fact that you and I, we have people that we know sometimes that they don't either mean well, or we know that we're not their favorite people, and we know, maybe we're not on their holiday card list, and yet we are called to serve them. Jesus, in spite of what he knew, that did not change the way that he behaved toward Judas. He knew that Peter was going to deny him. That did not change how he behaved toward Peter. He knew that all of those disciples later on tonight, you're going to be able to find them because they're going to abandon me. and he served them anyway. He knew that at some point Thomas was going to doubt him. Come here, let me touch you and see if those are even. Let me touch right here, because I know what I saw. He knew that there would be doubt, and yet he served them anyway. And he says, you call me master, you call me Lord. That's all, that's right. But I've washed your feet. And so just like I've done this, it's not just what you call me, but you have this example now of how you've seen me move, how you've seen me work, how you've seen me operate. This is what you've got to do for each other. You've got to serve one another. It wasn't just the foot washing. It was the fact that he set aside everything else. As leaders, we've got to set aside our titles, set aside what they call us, set aside who we think we are, set aside who we aspire to be, and put ourselves in the position to serve someone else. Serving requires an awareness of the world around you. When you're so caught up in being a sensation or a superstar or where you're going, quite frankly, that is a me-focused attitude that doesn't even watch for the need that it can serve. We talk about fulfilling purpose and, God, how do I find my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? I believe this. 2020 has shown us that we look for a need. Watch for a need and begin to fill it. Watch for a space that people need help and begin to pour into that space. I'm a Sunday school teacher. I teach in my local church. That Sunday School Girl was not a business plan to set out and be a superstar. I literally just started teaching a lesson online because it was a space to pour into. When the pandemic started, we weren't able to go out. This gathering here on Sunday morning, I'm not a million view person on YouTube because of this class, but there is a space where I have brothers and sisters who are not gathering in traditional settings. And it's a space where I can be and where we can pour into each other. Even some of the tools that I share, the kid pack, it's not because I teach a kids class and I have to get ready for my own, but for a space where teachers need help with resources. If you find a space and begin to pour, you will never be without pouring into purpose. God will continue to show you. He'll continue to open up doors. And that is what he's called us to be. God has not called us to be sensational. He's not called us to be superstars, but we've got to open our eyes and look for the places that we can serve. Jesus says, I've given you this example and you should do it just like I've done it with you. Verses 34 and 35 wrap up the lesson text. And Jesus continues to spend time and talk with the disciples. And he says that by this is the way that people are going to know that you're my disciples. And I think that's important. I really focused on the word this. Y'all know that lesson a few weeks ago with the lawyer and who is my neighbor. Remember, I told you that the rule turns on a word. Rules turn on a single word. By this shall all men know that you're my disciples. I know people see that you're my disciples because you walk with me. People see you because every time they see me, they see you. I know for you and I, people identify us as being God's people because we go to church on Sunday mornings, or because they know you're a Sunday school student. They know that you're a Sunday school teacher. They know that you're on the praise team. They know that you're in the choir. They may even know that you're an ordained minister, but that's not really how they know. They know what positions you serve in. But by this isn't any of those things I just named. This isn't church every week. By this shall all men know that you're my disciples. It's by the love that we show for each other. It's by the ways we respond to what we see. That's why I keep talking about 2020 being one of the greatest times. It's been hard, but for ministry, it's been one of the greatest times that we have ever experienced. Why? Because Jesus has given us, God has given us a space to serve. God stripped all of the superstar accoutrements. He stripped it and leveled the playing field. So superstar, and I'm not knocking mega churches. I think mega is beautiful, but I'm from a regular church. I grew up in a family church. And sometimes when we are on smaller scales, the truth is we see ourselves and what we offer as small. But all of that has been stripped away. The buildings were stripped. The lights have been stripped, all the fancy music, and we are stripped down to the element that really analyzes our love and our service. 2020 has boiled us down to, do you love God's people? Do you love what you're doing? Do you love God? Will you continue to see need? Will you continue to serve? Will you pour yourself into that space? By this, are men going to know that you're my disciples? Or are you going to sit and argue over who's the greatest? Are you going to stay stuck and not be able to move because you don't have an organ that allows you to change keys 6 times in your sermon? Are you going to be lost because there is not? I'm sitting in a classroom now, they faithful. By this is how men know that you're my disciples. Because the humble heart of a servant is sometimes overlooked by man, but it's never overlooked by God, Sister Tyson says. Let's see here. God doesn't need us to, he needs to instruct us, Sister Smith says, for sure. Your servant's towel, Sister Dolores, I love this. Your servant's towel must be bigger than your ego. That is so true. And yes, Sister Crystal, he tests us. He puts needs around us to see what we're going to do and what our focus is. So my challenge today is that you will ask God to make sure that your focus stays clear. Be reminded that every day we have this opportunity to love and to serve God's people, but we've got to keep our eyes on what's around us and not the stuff. It doesn't matter who is the greatest. And so, you know, when my pastor has a vacuum cleaner, that's the greatest. When I know that we can serve others, that's being the greatest. Not what you call me. It's not what seat I sit in the church. Because sometimes we that those who are in certain spaces, in fact, even in restaurants, right? There are different levels of service based on what restaurant you go to. I don't want to call any restaurant names, but think about your high-end places versus kind of the basic chains. And we expect a different level of service. But you know what? That's not what this is with God. This is everybody deserves superior service, the best of your service, your complete service. Remember that Jesus didn't wash and leave their feet dripping. He gave complete service. He humbled himself to the position of a servant. So be willing to humble yourselves. And not only that, remember the lesson that we got. These are my summary thoughts, that it's okay to receive and that there will be people who are going to be blessed by blessing us. So be careful that as we are learning to humble ourselves, that we don't block someone else's blessing where they may have been charged to bite. I looked in my email and I had a refund. What is this about? And I wanted to reach out because I paid the person and it was a business transaction online. So it wasn't like somebody I knew, you know, with relationship. And the person sent me an extra note and said that, you know, I have to do what the Lord instructs me to do. And God instructed me to send this back to you. It was interesting. Interesting that that person would serve in that way. Interesting that person would be willing to give in that way. But it's so interesting to look at how God, if you're sensitive to what's around you and you obey God, he will show you where you're supposed to move and what to do and who to bless. And so last week, in this humbling position of somebody blessing me back. But in that note, that person says, I am doing what God told me because I know that in blessing you, I will be blessed in return. And so I think the reverse of that is as people bless us, he called it the circle of life. It's the circle of life blessings. As we bless others, they're blessed and we're blessed in return. So we are charged with loving others. I pray that today you will find a way that you can love and serve someone. It is my time to go inside and serve in the sanctuary. We are here at the Dominion Word Ministries, Church of God in Christ in Denton, Texas. This is Pastoral Anniversary Sunday, so I hear the music starting and I do have to go ahead and get inside. I love you all. Please make sure that you like this video. Please, please, please subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. If you were new today, so glad to have you. I will be on tomorrow for Markup Monday. And oh, don't forget, if you are not receiving the emails, to go ahead to ThatSundaySchoolGirl.com. Make sure that you're on my email distribution. I'll be sending out the template, the free template, much later tonight. If you don't have a place to worship, please flip over now to Dominion Word, either here on YouTube or on Facebook. I am headed in. Thank you for joining me. Have a super day. See you later. Bye.